Welcome to the halfway point. Can you believe it? We made it halfway. This rather short look is into some tools of the trade, something that you should be familiar with. From familiar with to know how to use. This is really as far as lectures go, we're off ramping. So we have 2 more lectures after this. As we kind of more or less talk about things, but we're really going to be putting our emphasis and our focus directly into the cases. A lot of the tool, actually, looking at the list, a lot of these tools or devices should be devices that you are familiar with, because digital forensics is not restricted to just the endpoint, just the machine, the laptop, the desktop, the Raspberry Pi. You also have to remember about the network and be able to do investigations on the network as well. With regards to network forensics, there are 2 approaches to it, and that's either real-time capture and analysis or retroactive analysis of captured data. There are quite a number of tools that investigators should be familiar with. And that could be like EnCase, Endpoint Investigator, if your organization or if you're in law enforcement and have the funds for EnCase. There's tools like Kibana, which are free. There's Splunk, who is not free, but Splunk's competitor, Graylog, is. Should be familiar with things like Wireshark and TCP dump, Ettercap, Scapy, wget, curl. These are all tools that you should be familiar with, if not proficient at. Because like I said, any case that you may get, you could be dealing with network traffic as well, to help piece together what happened, the timeline, the communications, what was sent. As technical forensic investigators, this whole list of things should be familiar to you. For example, what is a proxy? Yes, a proxy server takes a request from one endpoint and sends it out as though it on their behalf. So it looks like at the endpoint on the other side, it looks like it's coming from the proxy server, not the actual system. It's not necessarily a gateway. Because it talks on behalf of an endpoint. It makes a whole new connection, whereas a gateway does not. Right, proxies can be used as a filter. What is the trying to find the right word? Why is a proxy useful to us in digital forensics? Proxy is akin to firewall-esque. What do you mean? And proxy the web filter acts like a firewall. It also can be a point of logging. Proxies can keep track of all the connections they made on behalf of whom and keep a log of all that. So that would be useful information. What useful information can we get from web servers? HTML history, what else? Any traffic that went in and out? Yep. We can look at the history of response codes. We can see the list of conversations. How about DHCP servers? Yes, seeing who was assigned what address. Why would a hub be something of interest to us? Why would a hub be interesting to us? There you go. Yeah. So James, you were thinking of a switch. A hub does not check packets. It does not filter anything. It broadcasts to all ports. It's much slower than a switch. Knowing there's a hub on the network is useful to us if we wanted to see what's happening at that point, because the hub is dumb enough to tell us every packet that's passing through it. A switch does not do that. So it's having a knowledge of things like that. So in the regard, would a hub and a proxy offer the same benefit? No, they would not. A hub is a slower device than a switch. And hubs don't tend to save any data. They're usually dumb devices. So again, having an understanding of these things, I wouldn't say you need to be a CCNA certified network person. But having an understanding of these things, and of course, the more knowledge you have, the better. But I wouldn't say it is a requirement. You could very easily be a network forensic investigator and only focus yourself on all things network versus those who are just endpoint. Because there's a lot to learn in either realm. So I wouldn't feel like, I think it would be unwise to tell you you have to be well versed in everything. Have an understanding, yes, but you don't have to be the expert in every single aspect because that's a lot. Because when's the last time you saw a floppy on a quiz? Right, 1996 for your class. A little bit on incident response. Security Operations Centers, or SOCs, focuses on information security and threat detection, which may include monitoring for unusual login attempts, malware, data exfiltration, and unusual external IP addresses connection attempts. Incident response is often a team response, as it can involve technical digital forensic examiners, a legal team, public relations, human resources, client liaisons, and more. Threat intelligence has become extremely important as organizations encounter threats from hacktivists, individual hackers, nation states, and so on. Sharing intelligence with industries and competitors has become a more robust and effective strategy. And it is that being proactive, listening on the network, seeing what is unusual and beginning to respond to that, trying to get ahead of malicious actors and malware on networks. An advanced persistent threat is a sophisticated, relentless, coordinated attack on a network with the goal of stealing intellectual property. APTs are difficult to identify when the network was initially compromised. It is a challenge to contain the infection of the malware, since these attackers move laterally through the network, and it becomes even more problematic if a large number of credentials have been compromised, since successful logins do not raise flags like unsuccessful logins do. It's also problematic to determine what data has been compromised, since the attacker may encrypt data that is being exfiltrated. APTs are quite dangerous. They're meant to not be detected. They use a lot of the common ports, like HTTPS, which nobody blocks because it's HTTPS. Or FTP or DNS. They're smart. And the way to watch out for them is understanding what is the baseline for the network you're on. What is the norm, so that when the unusual happens, you're able to react. In this realm, we have the cyber kill chain. Reconnaissance is always the first step, where the adversary collects information about a target in as many undetectable ways as possible. For example, in job postings, IT postings tend to contain information about what systems are in use, what applications, and other infrastructure. Press releases can sometimes have large purchases of IT systems for an organization. Tech forums, even though they're a great way to get help, an adversary can find information about what infrastructure you have from the questions you post. Other places like social media, Pastebin, DNS records, and anything publicly available can provide information to an attacker. Once that attacker has enough information, they move on to the weaponization phase, where an adversary will place a malicious code into a payload. That could be anything from a PDF, could be an email, a spam, try to put something on Wi-Fi, put a USB stick in the parking lot. Then there's delivery. So we have the weapon, we deliver it. And that could be through SQLi, spear phishing, electronic birthday card, however, delivering that piece of malware. There's the exploitation, which is the successful execution of the payload, which could be as simple as clicking a link, opening a file, downloading a file, connecting that USB drive to a computer. Once that happens, then we have the command and control, a system used to conduct the attack, to obfuscate and make all the requests look legitimate. That can be done through social media like Twitter, Google Groups, AWS, all kinds of ways to mask the communication. And once all of that is done, then exfiltration can occur, the actual theft of data from a network. We can do things like being a little more vague in job postings, filtering what goes on press releases, making anonymous accounts on tech forums. It's not a silver bullet, because a adversary who is motivated will find a way to get enough information to create the right weapon against our network, against our defenses. They will try to deliver in any way, shape, or form that they can. And as long as we are able to detect when an exploitation occurs, we can prevent the command and control and exfiltration. Austin asks, in regard to the exploitation part, does opening the fishy email, not clicking links or downloads, does it still open the user up for attack? That depends on the type of attack. There are, for example, exploits for iMessage on Apple phones where you don't even have to look at the text message, but because iMessage reads the text, that's enough to trigger the vulnerability. Sophisticated attack may or may not have a user interact. I mean, Android is also just as vulnerable, if not worse, because the App Store is open to anybody to upload stuff. But that's just one example of you don't need to click on a link. You don't need to open up the email for an exploit to be successful. Oh, no problem. Again, the way to detect it is knowing what's different, knowing what is normal, and having the not normal stuff come up. Being able to successfully do that is what will help you. Because it's gonna happen. You can't sit on a high horse and go, we're never gonna get attacked. That is a super dumb way of looking at things. The first couple of steps are gonna happen. Can you detect the exploitation phase and stop anything further? That's incident response. So some tools that help with that detection are things like Yara rules. It's an open source tool that helps classify and identify anything that's abnormal. It using things like Yara, you can find things like persistent attacks. You could find things like dynamic link library side loading, where they get malicious payloads to run in memory. We can find things like indicators of compromise, like changes in registry, change in DIL files, any new network ports that are opened, changes to master file tables. Along with having other tools. Again, network forensics doesn't live on its own. You can work hand in hand with endpoint. So being able to track when a attack began and the result of that attack is, let's say, you start seeing some odd packets coming through the network for a certain type of connection, and then in the few hours from the start of that, you notice that there are event logs where things started changing on endpoints. You can backtrack to see when did it start, how did it start, and work side by side with endpoint to map out the full timeline of events. But for a hospital, always seems to get always hit by crypto lockers. Yeah, healthcare doesn't always have the best security because a lot of devices aren't up to date, and that is by design. Like MRI scanners, I've seen a lot running Windows 7 or Windows XP, but the system works. And these are no, that's just the reality. Is in a lot of industries, they have they have the mindset of it ain't broke, don't fix it. It looks like it's working, so let's keep it working. Let's get as much use of it as we can before it fully breaks down. Even though the operating system is completely outdated and fully vulnerable because there's no more patches. Well, just, that's the reality that we work with. So we have to have the right systems in place that listen and detect when things that are not normal occur and be able to respond to those things as quickly as possible. The Navy, small businesses, there's a lot. There's a lot of folks who have the if it ain't broke, don't fix it. But it's just the reality we live in, and we can't complain about it. We just work with it. Good questions. Any others? This week, I do not have a case for you to work on. This week, I will have you go to TryHackMe. They have an incident response and forensics section. Complete 4 rooms. I'm going to let you know that for one of the cases that you'll be working on, you'll need to be able to play with volatility. So just throwing it out there that you should probably do volatility. Redline would be a good one too, because it's memory analysis. From there, I'll let you pick. You can do 2 from here, or you got to do a total of 4. I suggest volatility to be on your list. And you can pick 3 others that match incident response and forensics. Of course, these are not all of them. There's plenty more to choose from. But I'll let you pick which ones you want to do. And as usual, you just submit proof of completion. Shannon, yes, you should have the mindset that you presume your system will get hacked. It's not a matter of if, it's always a matter of when. That's why you set up all your sensors. That's why you set up an incident response team. That's why you do digital forensics, because you presume it's going to happen. So you act accordingly. Ready to respond when you have the evidence that you have been hacked. Cool. So off to TryHackMe we go. Again, choose 4 rooms. I once again will nudge you towards volatility. You get 4 rooms to choose from. And you just submit a PDF or a doc with a screenshot that shows you completed 4 rooms that are